Welcome to a new episode of the Movieslinger starring Weld and Dinul. And today it's going to be only myself that's going to be in this episode. Noan couldn't attend. So I'm pretty scared and also excited at the same time. So today I'll be talking about Michael Mann's Thief from 1981. This is his first major feature film because previously he did mostly TV films that were only shown in television back in the 70s. So in the opening scene of this film, there is an ongoing heist, and Frank is using a magnetic drill in order to break into a safe. And the truth is, James Caan actually did this. He did not use any stunt doubles. He actually went for training in order to learn how to break into safes from actual safe crackers. And he's not alone. He actually has his friend, Barry, who basically is kind of like the tech person who I think he was there to kind of like make sure that the alarms won't get triggered, because back in the 80s the wiring was totally different to in comparison to today's technology. And what I loved about this opening scene was not only the way how James Caan handled the whole drill, and also how he broke the lock in order to break into the safe. Also, this scene, there's this soundtrack, this synth soundtrack, which was actually being composed by a German synth band called Tangerine's Dream. And so after this whole heist thing happens, which has some really amazing shots, you have the rain, you can see a lot of neon colors. I felt like there was a lot of blue and green blended into the scenes, which I loved, and it really kind of showed that sort of nihilistic neo-noir aesthetic of the Chicago streets. So after this scene happens, he gives his diamonds to this person called Joe Gags, and unfortunately he passes away. And he finds out that while he was collecting, so this Joe Gags guy is also kind of like a loan shark collecting money, and he was actually thrown off from the 12th floor of a building, and he finds out that there's this person called Taglia, I can't remember his name, who he works for, and he realizes, oh, I can get the rest of the money from this employee of Gags. And he goes there and he confronts the owner and he says, look, I need my 185,000 back. I need it by today. And they come to agreement and they say, look, okay, fine, let's meet up in a place like this and I'll hand you over the money. So Frank goes and gets his money back, but he comes across a person called Leo, who's a gangster. And Leo says that, I know you've been doing this for a while. I know every 2 to 3 months you have a gig in which you break into a certain safe, you take money and you go. And I know you have a good good eye for quality when it comes to diamonds or cash, and you're really professional and you do it really smoothly. So he offers Frank an opportunity to work with him, but Frank refuses and he says, no, I am my own self. I'm independent. I do not work for anyone's ego. And he leaves the scene. Afterwards, Frank goes and meets with a waitress called Jessie, who he has a love interest towards. And Jessie is not really happy because Frank was late for his date. And somehow Frank gets her onto the car and he says, look, there's this quote I actually wrote down. Now he says that I wear silk shirts. I change cars like other guys change their shoes. I'm a thief. I have been in prison. And actually, this is like the first time in the film where we see that he opens up to someone, unlike the previous scenes of this film. And they actually go into a diner and they're talking about their past. And Frank hands over a picture, which is actually a collage in this scene. And he says that this is the kind of future I want to have because I am done chasing, I am done running around, being a thief, going after gig after gig. I want to settle down, I want to have a wife, I want to have kids, I want to have a house. So that is there in that collage. And after this long discussion between Jesse and Frank, Jesse wants to actually settle with him. And this is when Frank decides to call up Leo and say, hey, look, I want to join in, but only for one job, and it needs to be paid well. So once that happens, then the whole planning happens, and Leo and Frank and everyone else is there planning out how to break into this safe, which is, I believe, was a bank or an insurance company. I can't clearly remember it. And so they discuss about, in this building there's this much of alarms. They all run in telephone lines. However, there's this one alarm that gets triggered in the morning, and by 9 it gets switched off. And in order to switch it off, you have to tell a code through a radio, through radio communication. And once you say the secret code, the entire alarm system goes off. So while all of this is going on, Frank, he wants to settle in, so he decides to go to an adoption agency because during the diner scene with Jesse, she says that she can't have kids. And so they decide they want to adopt a child. So when they go to the agency, what happens is that the adoption agency is like, no, we can't give you a child because you've been in prison. And this is when Frank opens up and says, look, I was state raised and this is a dead place. A child in 8x4 green walls, after a while you tell the walls, my life is yours. And then he asks the woman, were you state raised? And she says, no, I grew up in the suburbs. And he's like, yeah, right, exactly. And he gets pissed off and he moves out. And so while all of this is going on, and while he's trying to build his life, they're all trying to, Frank and all, they're trying to figure out how to break in. Meanwhile, Frank realizes that his house is bugged, his car is bugged, and also there are cops kind of spying on him. And he confronts Leo and he says, look, ever since I've gotten in business with you, all of these problems have been happening. I need you to solve this. And Leo's like, no, don't worry, we'll get it solved. And then Leo weirdly asks Frank, like, so are you planning to have kids? And he's like, and Frank is like, that's none of your business. Leo is like, no, I'm always about family, and I think family is the best thing you can have, especially if you're working in this kind of, these kind of jobs. And you know what? I'll help you find a kid for y'all to adopt. And somehow Leo finds a kid for Frank and Jesse to raise from the black market. And later on, Frank names this kid David after his mentor Okla, which I forgot to mention. So Frank actually had a mentor who used to teach him about breaking into safes and whatnot. His name is Okla. There's a scene in which Frank and Okla, Okla is still in prison, and Okla speaks about how he doesn't want to die in this prison and how he wants to get out of prison soon so he can sort of live in his, remaining years of this life that he has spent. But somehow he gets. But I remember a week later in the movie he gets out. But unfortunately, he's not well. Frank and Jesse, they meet up with him, and unfortunately he passes away. So then comes the scene where we get into the heist. So in this film, what I loved about this film for a heist film was that they did not use these over the top gadgets, or they did not use any complex psychological tricks to trick the owner into giving them the password or anything like that. No, they use actual tools, everyday tools, drills, saws, whatever it is, in order to break into a safe or into a building. So they break into the building, so before the heist, they somehow come across the secret code for that radio in order to switch off the alarm. And so when they get into the safe, so this safe is like in this really well kept room, and they kind of clear off all the tables and chairs, and they use this huge rod because this safe apparently has a lot of layers and a lot of locks, and it's not very easy. And if you all remember, I must have told you all about how Frank confronts Leo, saying that there are people spying on me, and during that discussion, Leo asks, like, why don't you try to melt through the safe? And that's how they get the idea of, okay, why don't we melt through the safe? So in this scene, they take this huge rod and they light the very end of this rod, and what happens is that there are these huge fireworks that come popping in, like it's kind of like fireworks. And so what happens is they melt the safe, they make this kind of hole, and they get into the safe and they steal the diamonds and they leave the scene. And afterwards, Frank comes to Leo in order to get paid for it, because this is his sort of last gig. So Leo hands over Frank the check, and he only gets 80,000 when he was promised a lot more. And Leo is like, oh, don't worry, all of the other payments are being invested in these shops around these certain states, so that you don't have to worry about money and you can keep on, making money. And this was another quote that I wrote. He says that, Frank is like, so where's my money? And Leo says in this scene, where is my gratitude? And Frank says, where is my end? I can see my pocket is still in I can see my money is still in your pocket, which is from the yield of my labor. And I said, then I was like, wow. Because, in the 80s, there was a Cold War going on, and most of the films in Hollywood, especially at that time, was anti-communist. There weren't any communist sort of, propaganda or messaging, anything communist. It was deemed as evil or ineffective. And I remember even so in this scene also, Leo after this says, oh, so why don't you join a union? And Frank is like, I am wearing it. And I think that in this film, something that I observed was that this film is not only just a heist film, it's a film actually about the struggles of the middle class, because when it comes to this whole society and this class structure and all, it's very hard for the middle class to survive most of the times, because you have the upper class that with the contacts of their friends who are in these political powers or with law enforcement, they can get away with anything. But when it comes to middle class, it's not that easy. So afterwards, Frank threatens Leo and he says, "Look, I need my money in 24 hours. If you don't, I'm coming after you." But unfortunately, what happens is that Frank gets assaulted, and Frank afterwards then meets up Leo again, and Leo says, "Look, I own you. I want you to work until you're burnt out or until you're dead. And I don't care because I got you the baby you wanted to raise. I got you the house you wanted. Everything is there because of me." And I was like, damn, that was such a good villain line. And afterwards, Leo is like, okay, fine. You know what? He wants that. I'm going to go after him. And before he destroys his house and destroys his business, because other than him being a thief, he actually runs a business. He sells cars, used cars. He goes to his wife and he tells, "Look, I need you all to leave because things are going to get more dangerous than usual." And he tells his wife and tells the wife to take the kids and pack all their stuff and leave. And then he destroys the house because I think that in his sense, it was like, this house no longer belongs to me, so might as well destroy it. And I think the same thing happens to the business and whatnot. And he goes and he approaches Leo. So Leo is like sitting in this really luxurious house in a suburban area with a few guards. He goes in there, he beats up everyone, and he kills Leo. And when he comes out, he's then confronted by Leo's guards. He kind of gets shot, but he manages to shoot all of them. And he just walks into the darkness, and that's the end of the film. Now, the reason why I like this film was that it wasn't just a neo-noir film, it wasn't just an action film, it wasn't just a heist film. Like I mentioned before, this film is a sort of a social commentary towards the middle class and their struggles when it comes to the justice system, when it comes to the adoption system, the financial system, and even class. I want to say thank you so much for tuning in for this episode, and stay tuned because there are many more movies we have to discuss about. I hope you all have a nice week ahead, and I will see you all soon then. Bye-bye.